Welcome to the On the Pen, the Weekly Dose podcast, your one-stop shop for obesity medicine news with your host, man on the pen, Dave Knapp. Welcome to the award-winning On the Pen, the Weekly Dose podcast. I'm your host, Dave Knapp, man on the Manjaro. That's why I'm here. You are on the pen. Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, Manjaro, Zepbound, Compound, that pen. It's what we talk about here every week. And we've got some exciting news for you this week. I can't wait to bring you this news. If you're listening to the podcast and you haven't caught any of our videos this week, it's here. On the Pen book, Decoding GLP-1, a guide for friends and family of those on the pen, is here. It is a very, very compact read, but it is designed to help those of you who are on the pen foster conversations with the loved ones in your life that you just aren't comfortable broaching the GLP-1 topic with. Many people in the community have told me over the last couple of years that they were reticent to have the conversation about being on the pen with the people in their life that were the most important to them. And that broke my heart. And that was the impetus behind this book here that we've been working on for about 6 months. It is designed for anybody who's on the pen, anybody who's interested in GLP-1 medications. And the hope is that once they read and consume this book here, that they would pass it on to those loved ones in their life. It is a short read by design, but it packs a lot of information, including the history of GLP-1 medications, the current state of GLP-1 medications and how they work, future medications and how they're going to work, and the struggles that people face when they are trying to get access to care. My favorite part of the book is in the end of the book, where we give some resources for those who have a hard time starting these conversations. Would love a conversation starter guide. And then there's a guide for those who end up with the book who have loved ones on the pen, and really just some clear guidance in there on how to best love and walk through life with your loved one who is dealing with the disease of type 2 diabetes or obesity. So super excited about that. Thank you for those who have already purchased the book, who have given me such wonderful feedback. If you're interested, you can check out glpbook.com. glpbook.com will take you right there. And if you enjoy the book, consider giving it a 5-star rating and review. This was a big weekend on the pen. We had some really big interviews over the last week. We packed a bunch of really interesting interviews into a week. We had the CEO of Allurion, and that is the weight loss balloon that gets inflated in your stomach. It is going through FDA approval in the United States right now. That was a great conversation if you missed it last week. But we also had the chief legal counsel of the Outsourcing Facilities Association on. They are, of course, the trade organization representing 503B pharmacies that is suing the FDA over compound tirzepatide shortage ending. And yeah, their chief legal counsel came over here to On the Pen and shared his thoughts about what is going on with the future of compound tirzepatide and where that all is. Of course, December 19th is just a couple days away, where we were to hear from the Outsourcing Facilities Association and the FDA as they report back to the court. We haven't heard anything in the meantime, so we're really looking at that date. But there was some really good information in there, and really positive, I believe. If you are somebody who relies on access to compounds, I think you'll find what Mr. Grossman said in this interview to be quite interesting. So if you missed that, please go back and check it out. It's available on audio format on the podcast platforms, and it's also available in the video format on all of the platforms that we're on Twitter, on YouTube, and on Facebook. So TikTok, we even uploaded a 30-minute interview or 18-minute interview up to TikTok. So we'll see how that does as well. But jumping into some of the interesting news this week, it's all about PBM reform. Now, we've heard some really interesting things from the incoming Trump administration on things that will potentially impact accessibility to GLP-1 medications. You saw this past week that the stock market opening had Jim Cramer from CNBC basically cornering RFK Jr., where RFK Jr. said, in response to the questions, what do you think about GLP-1 medications? He said that they have their place. And so that was a big change from some of the things that we've heard previously from RFK Jr. And I think sort of in line with what I expected to hear once things started to get serious about appointments to serious positions. So we'll continue to watch that closely as it unfolds. He, of course, could end up being the Health and Human Services Secretary if everything goes through with the nominating process and the confirmation process. But I think more importantly to watch is the potential appointment of Dr. Makary to the FDA head. And Dr. Makary, of course, leads up the telehealth platform Sesame Health, which provides, amongst other things, compound GLP-1 medications. So somebody stepping into that role who uniquely understands the importance of that and hopefully can get to the bottom of everything related to the shortages. But interestingly enough, we actually heard from President-elect Donald Trump this week about a conversation that he was having down in Mar-a-Lago in relation to PBM reform. Now, it's kind of interesting, very Trumpy response here, but he appears to be talking about PBMs in this clip that I'm going to play for you here. And if you want to know, like, well, why do you assume that he's talking about PBMs? Well, you'll see when he talks about the middlemen. We talk about PBMs as middlemen all the time on this channel, and we're going to get into a little bit about what PBMs mean after we hear this from President-elect Trump. Also, that same day and into today, we've seen a big dump in the health insurance stocks. So they think that he's talking about PBMs too. So let's listen.
We have a thing called the middleman, the middleman, right? The horrible middleman that makes more money, frankly, than the drug companies, and they don't do anything except they're a middleman. We're going to knock out the middleman. We're going to get drug costs down at levels that nobody has ever seen before.
So really interesting comments from President Trump, who seems to not have a super clear understanding of what PBMs are. But we'll be following this one closely because this is on the heels of some potential legislation for some really meaningful PBM reform that has bipartisan support. But before we get into that, I want to get into the question that inevitably pops up anytime we start talking about PBMs. Many of you are aware of what PBMs are and what they do, but many of you are not. So when we say PBMs, it's pharmacy benefits manager. They're the middlemen in the world of prescription drugs, and they're supposed to keep costs low by negotiating costs with drug companies to get the medications onto their formulary. But ultimately, the negotiation process leads to really fat paychecks for the PBMs, the savings not really passed along to patients, right? So these companies grow and grow and grow and grow, and they sort of have a pay-to-play scheme going with the pharmaceutical drug companies in which they basically gatekeep access to their formularies. That's the list of medications that a specific PBM will offer. And it's basically done on a how much are you going to pay us to put your drug on our formulary type of situation. So oftentimes you'll see more expensive drugs be on the list, more expensive drugs for patients, right? Rather than cheaper drugs. Even if there's a better option, because the PBMs gatekeep what can go on there based upon how much money they're going to make off that script. And then conversely, on those expensive drugs, many, many times they will force you to use their pharmacies, which they also own, so that they can double dip on the profit making there. So one of the interesting things is to look at these health insurance companies and look how much of this ecosystem they own. So United Health Group is one of the largest companies in the world. Of course, the tragic news that we heard last week of their CEO basically being murdered in Manhattan. There is an undercurrent of real, genuine anger and animosity towards the system in this country, and it's a very scary powder keg right now. But United Health Group owns OptumRx. That's their pharmacy benefits manager. And while United Health Group doesn't own a retail pharmacy chain, if you look at another massive insurance company like Cigna, who owns Express Scripts, who are blocking access to new patients of GLP-1 medications, they own a pharmacy called Accredo and CuraScript. So you can see how these big companies are gobbling up the entire ecosystem of insurance, of the formularies and of the pharmacies, and really running monopolies in this game. And in the end, the people who suffer are patients. And thank God there is some bipartisan support, and it sounds like this is on the radar of President-elect Donald Trump as well. But in a world where it seems like hell would have to freeze over before you could get either side to come together on something, it looks like we may have something cooking with Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts and Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri, both very outspoken, both very partisan figures within their caucus, but they've joined together to introduce a pharmacy benefit manager control legislation called the Patients Before Monopolies Act bill. Now, this is really exciting here because it's got support in the House, bipartisan support in the House with Representatives Diana Harshbarger, a Republican from Tennessee, and Representative Jake Auchincloss, of a Democrat from Massachusetts. The bill would prohibit any person from owning a pharmacy and an insurance company at the same time, or from owning a pharmacy benefits manager and a pharmacy at the same time. So this really goes at the heart of this, again, sort of monopoly or control of the ecosystem that is in place by these insurance companies. And this could have some real meaningful impact here when it comes to PBM reform. So it sounds like we could have some real momentum building for some really impactful PBM reform in this country. You know, when we talk about the cost of medications in this country, and everybody often brings up, well, we pay so much more in this country than they do in country X, Y, or Z. And that is because our list prices are incredibly high here. And the list prices are all designed as a way to basically bring a product to market at a price, negotiate the cost with the PBM so that they can make, the drug companies can make sure that the PBMs get their piece and that they're also getting their piece. And at the end of the day, we're paying higher amounts of money for these medications as patients also. So it's just a system that bilks especially chronically ill patients in the United States. And it is about time we saw some action in Washington, D.C. to get some meaningful PBM reform. Could this be happening? It might be happening. And so I'm excited to hear about the potential for meaningful legislation and meaningful PBM reform in this country. If you're watching this broadcast on one of the social media platforms, put PBM reform, hashtag PBM reform in the comments. And if you are making any content out there about this, please use the hashtag PBM reform. Keep the conversation going, because our representatives need to know that we wholeheartedly support meaningful PBM reform in this country. In some exciting news with our partners and sponsor of On the Pen, the Weekly Dose podcast, telehealth company Ro is announcing that they will be offering the Zepbound 2.5 and 5 milligram vials from Lilly Direct. Now, this is a really awesome expansion by Eli Lilly into that direct-to-consumer market that could, again, disrupt the PBMs, could disrupt the whole system here if pharmaceutical companies decide to follow suit and go direct to consumers with a cash pay price. You know, the significance of this whole thing with Eli Lilly really is that they are going direct to consumer. They are not waiting for legislation. They are cutting out the pharmaceutical middlemen and going direct to consumer with the vials. Now, we hope that Eli Lilly releases all the vials, but in the meantime, 5 milligram dose of Zepbound actually has comparable weight loss results to 2.4 milligrams of Wegovy, which is the highest dose of semaglutide. And you're able to get the vials of Zepbound, branded Zepbound, through Eli Lilly for about half the cost, less than half the cost of what you could get Wegovy for at their list price if you don't have insurance coverage. So this is great for accessibility to GLP-1 weight loss medications. But we're going to have CEO Z Reitano from Ro on the Pen Live this Thursday night to talk more directly to you, the community, and take your questions about why is this meaningful? What is so impactful and meaningful about this new offering from Ro and the partnership with Eli Lilly? We're excited to bring that to you this week. Of course, if you're interested in any of the medications that we talk about on this channel and on this podcast, you should check out ro.co/OTP for On the Pen. where they talk about their Row Body program. Patients lose 15 to 20% of their body weight in a year on the Row Body program when coupled with lifestyle modifications and GLP-1 medications. So if you're interested, go check it out. Of course, if you're going to start new medication, you want to always familiarize yourself with potential side effects, of which there are some. So make sure that you find that just a couple clicks away at row.co/OTP. And as always, thanks to Row for sponsoring the podcast and helping us take this thing to the next level here. Now, I want to get into and introduce you to a new utide. We talk about semaglutide, tirzepatide, dulaglutide, liraglutide. Have you ever heard of utraglutide? This is a new long-acting GLP-1 in the works from Sun Pharmaceuticals. Now, this was some data that was presented earlier this year, actually at Obesity Week. I was not there for this specific session, but Sun Pharmaceuticals conducted a 24-participant trial in Belgium for their fixed dose of 6.68 milligrams. So very low dose milligrams wise compared to your semaglutide or tirzepatide. It was an ascending dose, 0.68, 0.9, 1.52, and 2 milligrams against a placebo control group. Now, the interesting things is that this did show some really significant weight loss, sustained weight loss of 8.1 pounds by day 43 after just a quick 29-day trial. So people really sustained some decent results after losing an average of, I believe it was around 10 pounds. They had sustained that by day 43. So that was really good news. But the interesting thing here is that there were also metabolic improvements in A1C, in insulin levels, in lipid reduction. But the interesting thing here is that there was also noticeable leptin reduction. Now, we've been talking more and more about the two hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hunger signaling hormone, and leptin is actually a satiation signaling hormone. It tells your body that you're full, that you have had enough. So this would be the first GLP-1 therapy, to my knowledge, that's actually being shown in early trials. And it's a very small trial here, but the fixed dose of the leptin or of utraglutide showed leptin levels decreased, fixed dose from 19.8 to 13.8, and the ascending dose from 17 to 11. So the reduction in leptin was a very interesting result here in this clinical trial. So those of you who are following along may be curious why a decrease in leptin levels would be significant, because wouldn't you want more of the hunger signaling hormone? Well, they've tried leptin analogs before and found it's not really helpful to just increase leptin. The decrease in leptin along with weight loss is actually going to show a reduction of fat mass, because leptin is produced in fat cells, but it's also going to show that the leptin sensitivity has likely increased, because with more leptin, or reduced levels of leptin in the body, coupled with actual weight loss happening at the same time, it shows that you need less leptin to actually manage your caloric intake. And so that's really great to talk about leptin sensitivity, because again, as previous trials have kind of shown us, just simply slamming your body with more leptin isn't an effective treatment for obesity. So this is a very interesting signal that they have early on in this trial, that there's a reduction of leptin and an increase in weight loss, and not only an increase in weight loss, but sustained weight loss, perhaps by activating this leptin pathway. So again, multiple pathways of hormone control with these medications is the future. And you're already seeing that with the next generation CagriSema, which we've talked a lot about for the last couple of weeks here. CagriSema is the next one to hit the market from Novo Nordisk, and that combines a GLP-1 analog in semaglutide with cagrilintide, which is a amylin analog. And amylin is another hormone that deals with hunger as well, produced in the pancreas. So the future of these medications is super bright and super exciting, and we'll stay out at the forefront of everything that's coming around here at On the Pen. Thank you for hanging with us this week, and use that hashtag PBM reform. Please check out the book. This has been a real labor of love over the last few months, and I know that you're going to be excited to check it out. So check this out on Amazon, Decoding GLP-1, a guide for friends and family of those on the pen. And join us this weekend, this Thursday, not this weekend, this Thursday. If you can't catch it live, you can join us this weekend. We're going to have some giveaways on the pen, and we're going to have Ro CEO Z Reitano to talk about the releasing of the vials by Ro. Until next week, have a great week. Thank you for hanging out with me. I appreciate y'all.